Good morning, everyone. There are plenty of seats if you would like to come up, but I know probably the stage is no competition for the Frenchette Bakery pastries. So those who are standing in the back, I'm on to you and your love of carbs and caffeine. I share them both. I am delighted to welcome you as the Alice Pratt Brown Director of the Whitney Museum to the press preview for Edges of Ailey. Somebody asked me this morning, how are you doing? And I said, I'm incredible. How could I not feel incredible on a day like today when we open, I think, one of the most glorious exhibitions in the history of this museum? And I am so happy to share it with all of you. I am going to introduce Adrienne Edwards, the curator of this exhibition, but before that I'll say a few words, and we have more than the usual number of speakers at our press preview, but that's not to scare you. That's actually to suggest that this show really was a remarkable collaboration with many parties and partners, and we want them all to have a moment to share in the story of Alvin Ailey, which itself was a story of tremendous collaboration. So I have been asked a number of times, why is the Whitney doing an Alvin Ailey show? And the short answer to that question is that I and we believe that Alvin Ailey is one of the greatest artistic geniuses of the 20th century, not just in dance, but in any medium, period. And this show is meant to tell that story, to celebrate that legacy, and to explore the life and the work of this incredible man and what he left all of us, which continues to grow and to thrive in so many people and in so many imaginations. Alvin Ailey's work, to me, is everything. It touches on, as he put it, his celebration, his exploration of the Black experience, from his time growing up in Texas in the South, to LA, to New York, to Broadway, to Soul Train, to the White House, to dancing all around the world, to Studio 54, to the church, and sadly, at the end of his life, to the AIDS crisis, all of which is reflected in this exhibition. So this is a story about America, truly, and the culture of the late 20th century as it continues to thrive today. I want to start by thanking the executive director of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, Bennett, Rink, and really to thank the entire company, the staff, everyone who is a part of that organization, the board of trustees. This has been a collaboration like no other at the Whitney. Have we ever partnered with a non-museum and this intensively, and we've all learned so much and benefited from your generosity, your collaboration, your kindness, your goodwill. We want to be the best home that we can be for all of you from now until February 9th, because that's what this is going to be. The company will be here, they will be dancing, they will be teaching class, they will be sharing their joy and their wisdom with everyone who comes to the Whitney. I have a few other thanks that I will do because that is the job of the director. So I will thank Allan Gray, who I was just talking to, from the Kansas City Friends of Alvin Ailey, and the Allan Gray Alvin Ailey Archives Family Foundation. Hope I got that right. I want to thank all the lenders to the exhibition and all the donors to this show. For anyone who's been upstairs, you can imagine it was not inexpensive, and we had tremendous support from Bank of America and Delta Airlines, who are longtime corporate sponsors of the Whitney, as well as many individuals, our entire board of trustees, and foundations, including the Ford Foundation, the Mellon Foundation, the NEA, the Green Foundation, and many more. Before I introduce Adrienne, we'll do one last thank you, and that is really to the staff of the Whitney Museum. And when I say the staff, I mean the whole staff of the Whitney Museum. This is one of the most complicated, ambitious, boundary-breaking shows that we've ever done, and everyone who works here has really risen to the challenge of the concept of this show and also the greatness of Ailey's legacy. I think everyone at the Whitney believes that this was a body of work and a life story that deserves to be chronicled at the highest possible level, and I think when you're in the galleries you can see just the extent of the imagination, the innovation, and the hard work that went into making a show as extraordinary as this. Now I would like to introduce Adrienne Edwards, who is our Engell Speyer Family Senior Curator and Associate Director for Curatorial Programs. And Adrienne, apart from being that, is a friend of mine, a brilliant curator, and someone who I met 7 years ago. I was corrected. I said 6 yesterday. She wasn't even applying for a job at the Whitney. We were just getting to know each other. And she said, I asked her if there were any shows she ever really wanted to do. And she said, I've always wanted to do a show about Alvin Ailey. And I thought, okay, well, you're coming to work at the Whitney and we're doing this show. I've never so fast, sort of in my mind, put something on the museum's calendar. And here we are 6, 7 years later, and it's been a long few years. You can see what went into a show like this, the collaboration I mentioned, the research, the archives. Let's not forget that there was a global pandemic that happened during this period that sometimes kept us from working one-on-one with our collaborators, from going to the places where Alvin Ailey's work resides. And Adrienne was so tenacious and so creative during this entire process, and she has created a show that I think is truly one of the most brilliant and visionary exhibitions I've ever seen, not just at the Whitney, but anywhere. How to tell this story through so many different parts that all come together to this incredible, glorious whole. So I really want to thank you, Adrienne, on behalf of the Whitney, and even personally, because I feel so much joy every time I walk in those galleries, and I can't wait to get to experience this show as it unfolds over the next few months. So with that, I welcome Adrienne to the podium, and she will introduce our next speakers. Thank you.
Good morning. How many of you have already been on the floor? Seems about half. So I'm intended to take you through what exactly it is that you're experiencing up there. And I want to thank Scott, and I want to thank the Whitney staff as well, and last but not least, the Ailey Foundation for everything that they've done to make this possible. It's been quite a journey. Mr. Gray for opening and handing over the holdings that are Ailey's personal papers that reside in Kansas City at the Black Archives of Mid-America. So special. There's Dr. Karma. Hey, Dr. Karma, I haven't seen you. They were so gracious to us. Thank you. It really could not have happened without you. We were in 10 archives over the last 6.5 years to make this show. But these two in particular were essential to getting to the core of what is a show about Ailey's work and his life, and those he constellated for us and that we constellated with him. So with that, let's have a little Ailey.
About me that had always danced. You know, I had been interested in movement from almost the very beginning. Well, you know, black people dance at home. You know, we had music at home always, and everybody was always doing social dances at home. So there was something about me that was always a dancer. Modern dance just seemed to encapsulate all of my ideas. I mean, there was movement, there was color, there was painting, there was the sculpture, and there was the putting it all together into a kind of meaningful, expressive art form. So I was hooked forevermore about age 18 on the idea that dance could be that expressive thing for me. So that's how it came to me. I was very involved from the very beginning, and still am very involved with the idea of expressing the black experience through what I choreograph about and what my company Dance is about. I'm a Texan. I was born in Texas and stayed there until I was 12. And the first dances that I ever made were what I like to call blood memories, dances that come from the Brazos Valley in Texas. The blues, the spirituals, the work songs, the lullabies, the songs that my mother got happy to in church became a part of a very famous ballet of mine called Revelations. So one of the things I'm very concerned about, and always have been, is putting the black experience out there in a meaningful, beautiful way. What I'm doing is really trying to hold up a mirror to our society so that people can see how beautiful they are, especially our black people. You know, that the key really is, I think, is in loving, is in giving, you know, is in releasing one's feeling toward other people, and through them to our audiences. one of my goals has been not only to let the black experience come out, but also to show the rest of the world that we too are a beautiful flower of the 20th century and are able to express that as well.
I love that sweatshirt. So Ailey said a couple of things that are really important and been really core to the development of this show. One of them is this idea of blood memories. It's just the way that he characterized what was inspiring his dances. And so that arrives in the show, which is in some ways an exhibition as art installation. It's about a whole envelope, which those of you who've been up there can probably feel. So it's enveloped in red, and there are a series of islands, and they form a kind of archipelago that really sort of gives you a sense of a visual connectivity between Ailey's dances and what is essentially, which is shown up in the archive and the works of art that are there with it. And so that is, in this sort of red experience, is a surround, and it is an 18-screen video projection that has a montage that has been taken lovingly by Kyle Lu and Josh Begley as a kind of culling, if you will, of over 200 videos we found in the Ailey archive. And those videos are performances made especially for the camera. They're interviews with Ailey, they're recordings of rehearsals that go back as early as 1962, et cetera, et cetera. And so that experience really starts with his life and takes you through key dances and then ends with the moment of the dancers saluting him, sending him well wishes while he's in the hospital in 1989, the year that he dies. And so we could have done a show that was about the company, right? But we decided to do a show that was really about Alvin Ailey, that he becomes the center to remind us of the specialness of this person who started this company in 1958. So that's really, and it's his works for the company, but it's also things he did for the Paris Opera, for the Met Opera, for the ballet. So it's a real fullness, and also looks at his years in theater, and on Broadway and in Hollywood. So that's one level of the exhibition. The second level are his delicious, wonderful notebooks. And they are really important to spend time with. We are so fortunate to be able to have his writings. So you have everything from choreographic notes to letters to his lovers, to musings, to his missives, to his picks himself up sort of notes. It's really amazing. And the handwriting, you'll notice, changes depending on where he is. You can tell that it's very proper in a journal when you're looking at his touring journals. But if you look, you can tell that he's in the rehearsal studio because it's all big and loose and skewed, and he's just making notes, reflecting on things. So I encourage you to spend time with them. And then there's the group of artists that I'll talk about in a little bit that are primarily visual artists, but there's work in printmaking, painting, sculpture, video, drawing. So it's collage. It's a real round of very robust visual experience. So in some ways, you could take a sort of experience of the show that really is just looking at the archival material, start over, and have a visual art experience. Or you could sit there and watch the video. Or you can sort of meander through all of those things. And the labels are there to help you understand the connectivity between what you're looking at and the archive. So I encourage you also to pay attention to those. So this is the bird's eye view of the floor, and it's organized in thematic sections. In those sections you can see here, and you can also see the color red and the surround, or as I like to think about it, Ailey's embrace of everyone else. And this is the list of 82 visual artists who are there alongside Mr. Ailey. And I'm so thrilled that a number of these works are actually from the Whitney's collection. And there are 5 works by 4 artists that were made especially on the occasion of the exhibition, and I'll point those out as they come up. But they really are here because they amplify the themes in Mr. Ailey's dances. They share those themes, and you can see how, in some ways, they're universal themes for a whole cross-section of artists. The earliest work is from 1851. And so this is just a very quick, I promise, overview of some of these sections. But Blackness in Dance, you can see the sheer ubiquity with which it shows up for so many artists and the way they beautifully render the black body in motion. And here is Lynette Yadam-Boyakai's new painting made especially on the occasion of the show. And then you have pairings like this. Lorna Simpson made a video in 2011, and she set this video with Ailey dancers, Ailey 2 dancers, and it's just incredible. It's a reflection on a time when she had a recital as a kid and her own feeling about that experience. And then we have the Southern Imaginary. Everyone knows, right, that Mr. Ailey had this deep inspiration and love of the South. And this is something I share from South Carolina. But so the Southern Imaginary, though, for Ailey was not just about the American South. It was also about the Caribbean. It was about South America, in particular Brazil, and even more specifically Bahia, where he spent time and did a lot of research. We found reams of research in Mr. Gray's holdings that had a lot of information about his time in Brazil. And so Ailey's mother and his family had been sharecroppers in Texas. And so you'll see, and Ailey himself picked cotton, you'll see cotton landscape coming up quite a bit in the show. Fellow Texan John Biggers here, this is his sharecropper. And then spirituality, there's Revelations, but there's a number of dances that Mr. Ailey made that really looked at spirituality, not only in a kind of Baptist or evangelical kind of Southern tradition, but also looking at candomblé, looking at voodoo. And this is something we can trace through Ailey, and he speaks about it in relationship to Catherine Dunham in particular, but also Pearl Primus. And so there's a whole section in the show that is, I would say, like visual note-taking, a deep dive into all of the influences. This is one of the important edges to Ailey, those who influenced him. And so we were able to look into the archives of Carl Van Vechten, Catherine Dunham, Pearl Primus, Duke Ellington, Carmen de Lavallade, Jeffrey Holder, all of these people who really, Ted Shawn, who was a founder of Jacob's Pillow, all of these people who really deeply changed Ailey and influenced the way that he made his dances. And you'll see his writings about them, you'll see the way he cites them. It's very surprising. Even Merce Cunningham, who he described as being expressionless and yet appears in multiple ways in those notebooks. So migration, Ailey, this section on migration is very important because Ailey, again, leaves Texas with his mother in the 40s. They go to Los Angeles. He leaves Los Angeles, goes to San Francisco for a little while where he meets Maya Angelou, and then leaves San Francisco and goes to New York, of course, to star in, to have a role in House of Flowers. And that moment is so important because it is on the context of Broadway that Ailey actually gets resources and also finds dancers who would perform ultimately in Blues Suite in 1958 at the 92nd Street Y. One of the things I want to point out here is Lonnie Hawley sharing the struggle. We have a lot of artists who are working in the Southern vernacular tradition, and that is because Ailey was technically a self-taught artist. De Lavallade took him to study with Horton to his first dance class, but he really kind of evolved his style on his own. And so in a nod to that, and also in a nod to this kind of distinct kind of Southern sensibility, we even featured their work. Questions of freedom and liberation, not only in relationship to Blackness, but also in relationship to queerness, has been a really important preoccupation of Mr. Ailey. And so one of the ways I wanted to foreground that is the Robert Duncanson from 1851, which is a view of Cincinnati, Ohio from Covington, Kentucky, which at that time was a question, depending on where you stood and if you were Black, if you were free or not. And so it is an important anchor, and it sits in a triangulation that really looks at this question of freedom in the mid-19th century. This Rashid Johnson painting, Untitled Ancient Men from 2016, was really important as a way to sort of index. We found a page in the notebook where Mr. Ailey had simply written 1980, nervous breakdown, hospitalized 7 weeks. So that kind of like the pressures and the vulnerability and the openness which he spoke about it and wrote about it is paired here, that page, with Rashid Johnson's painting. And then Black women. So this is a wonderful painting to the your far left, of Judith Jamison as Josephine Baker by Emma Amos. And then we have the great Jeffrey Holder's painting of his wife and the great dancer I've been talking about, Carmen de Lavallade. So this is really important way. We also have a wonderful new painting by Micheline Thomas of Catherine Dunham. And music. So Ailey was, there are many ways to choreograph, right? But Ailey's approach was one in which he would select the music first often, and then set the dances directly onto the dancers, sort of in a very improvisational way. But music was such an important thing. He loved Duke Ellington, loved Charlie Parker, Max, you just find Marian Anderson, you just find list and list of musicians and a lot of writing about music, which you'll see in the galleries. And then we have a section that's sort of after Ailey, or a moment to kind of really look at the company during the time that he ran it from 1958 to 89. And here we're very happy to be able to feature the panel that features Ailey and the dancers who died from AIDS, from the AIDS Memorial Quilt. Also in that gallery, we have posters and programs from the company during Ailey's lifetime. And we have some wonderful data visualizations that give you a bird's eye view or a kind of at a glance understanding of the company's reach, not only around the dancers, how long they stayed, how their roles changed, but their touring, where they went. And then also, lastly, how these dances connect to one another, what they were performed alongside, and there's some really nice takeaways. So I encourage you to spend some time with them. They're only about 3 minutes each. And then our performance program. So we're very lucky. The way I like to talk about it is it's like uptown comes downtown. The Ailey company with its full company, Ailey 2, the classes for the public, their school will be here in this very theater one week every month for the run of the show. So that's a total of 5 times. And then we have 11 other choreographers and their collaborators who we have commissioned or invited to perform on the occasion of the show. And it's a very nice combination of people. So we have dance almost every week from now, as of next week until February. And then the catalog, and I think this is my last slide. There has not been a scholarly publication on Ailey in 20 years. So we are really thrilled to be able to have this book, this tome, that has 11 essays, and then it has 2 wonderful conversations. One is with the legacy figures, so it's Ms. Waters, it's Chaya, it's Ms. Jamison, in conversation with me, and then we gathered a group of people, art historians, choreographers, dance studies scholars, filmmakers, to reflect upon Ailey's legacy. And then importantly, we have been able to reproduce some materials from the archives, including, for the first time ever published, Ailey's short stories and poems. And then we have a full compendium of all the dances that he made that is chronological with really wonderful photographs. and then a beautiful, lush visual chronology of his life. Thank you. Bennett, you're up.
Thank you, Adrienne. Thank you, Scott. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's quite amazing. I saw the show last night for the first time, and I was reflecting back on when Adrienne called me, which was about 6 years ago. And in her understated way, she said, "I have this idea. Can I come talk to you?" And here we are. It's just extraordinary. It's an expansive show, and I think it really captures Alvin Ailey's expansive vision as an artist and as a person, right? His humanity. So I'm going to begin with a few words about collaboration, because it was really a very collaborative process, and that's what's brought us here. So Mr. Ailey never had any shortage of ideas. In fact, he overflowed with them, as you'll see in the show. But collaboration to him was both an artistic practice and an ethic. In a sense, the sharing of mutual recognition was for him the very meaning of dance. From the beginning, he was not interested in having what's called a single choreographer company. He created his own classic works, Blues Suite, Revelations, very early on, but at the same time, he was commissioning others to come and create work, and really creating a modern dance repertory company, something that really didn't exist until that time. So whether we're at home here in New York City, we have our annual holiday season at New York City Center, December 4th through January 5th, or we're touring the world, we repeat almost every day Mr. Ailey's mantra, which was, "Dance came from the people, and it should always be delivered back to the people." To the best of my knowledge, no art museum has ever before organized such a deeply researched, extensively programmed, or comprehensive exhibition about the life and work of a performing artist. And we're proud, as Adrienne mentioned, that the exhibition will include the participation of all aspects of Ailey. So starting next week, we'll have what we call the first and second companies, so Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater and Ailey 2, our company of younger dancers, performing here in this space. And then every week until January, we'll have our students from the school, we'll have extension classes for the general public, we'll have arts education programs for school children. We'll really bring the gamut of Ailey into the Whitney. And we're especially excited that our very own interim artistic director, Matthew Rushing, will have a piece here, commissioned by the Whitney and by Ailey, called Sacred Songs. So the genesis of Sacred Songs was that when Mr. Ailey first created Revelations back in 1960, it was about an hour long. It premiered at the 92nd Street Y here in New York. And as he prepared it to go on tour, he needed to sort of edit it down. So from the original hour, it became what's today a 35-minute dance. So there were certain songs, spirituals, that didn't make it into the final. So Matthew Rushing has gone back, taken those original spirituals, and created a new work. So in a way, it's a collaboration from one generation to the next. So we're excited that it'll be here and that it'll be in our season at City Center in December. So I want to once again thank Adrienne, thank Scott, thank the entire Whitney staff, thank everyone at Ailey who helped make this possible. And here to give us a few words about Mr. Ailey himself is someone who was very close to him during his lifetime. Sylvia Waters joined the company in 1968. She danced with the company for a number of years. And then when Mr. Ailey had the notion to create a second company, he asked Sylvia to lead that, which she did. And when Mr. Ailey passed, Sylvia really became, I think, one of the key carrying on influences, in terms of his legacy. She works in our archives to this day. And so, Sylvia, if you will join us to say a few words, we would welcome to have you here.
Thank you, Bennett. Thank you, Bennett. And good morning, everyone. It's incredibly moving to be here at the Whitney, seeing this beautiful, deeply thoughtful exhibition about a man and an artist who has meant so much to so many people, and I'm, of course, one of them. It takes my breath away. It's mesmerizing, the experience of seeing this and hearing his voice. I first came within Alvin Ailey's circle of influence when I was in high school and studied at the New Dance Group. Mr. Ailey was a member of the faculty. And as a young dance student, I was lucky enough to be in the 92nd Street Y audience for Alvin Ailey's first performance in 1958, which was Blue Suite, and at the premiere of Revelations in 1960. Now, the YMHA, 92nd Street Y, was a place where there were as many luminaries in the audience as there were on stage. And it was a place, as a young dancer, you be there or be square every weekend for the price of $2 a ticket. But I did not become part of his world until much later, after I'd earned my degree at Juilliard and had studied with Martha Graham and a number of artists, and Donald McHale, Maurice Béjart. I had relocated to Paris in the 1960s because I'd been on tour with Black Nativity, with Marion Williams, and a group of gospel singers. I was the Virgin Mary, and Morris Donaldson was Joseph, my partner. The year when I decided to return to New York in 1968, the year when Mr. Ailey received his Guggenheim Fellowship, performed at the Edinburgh Festival, and presented his first Broadway season. And I ran into him at the Brooklyn Academy of Music with Nick Chernovich, an incredible lighting designer, and he said, "Sylvia, what are you doing?" And finally, I was able to tell him nothing, and that's when I joined the company. That was the year. I had no way of knowing it then, but I was going to stay with the company and the Ailey organization for the next 44 years until the time came to retire. Imagine getting a paycheck from a dance company that long. That's really incredible to me. Thanks to the company, I traveled to South America, North Africa, Europe, the Soviet Union, and because of Alvin, had made us America's cultural ambassador. And then in 1974, Alvin decided to organize a second professional company, this one created especially for up-and-coming dancers and choreographers, and he empowered me to be its artistic director. It was a daunting assignment. When I think of Alvin's legacy, Ailey too is what comes most into focus, because what he had created, what he had inspired, has now run through generations of emerging dancers and choreographers, Matthew Rushing, Ulysses, the list is endless. And for almost 4 decades, I was privileged to train them, lead them, and transmit what Mr. Ailey had given us. The thing about Alvin, he was a great listener. Imagine listening to me with my problems about the second company when he was running the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. My gosh. But listen, he did. He was an amazing mentor. And at one point, early on, just as we were starting to tour, he said, "I think you should name the company Deep Purple." And I said, "Alvin, that name is taken by a rock group." So we became the Alvin Ailey Repertory Ensemble at that point. And also what comes to mind, Lula Cooper, his mom. I was Alvin's executor. And it was a surprise to me, as it was a surprise to her, because she repeatedly told me, "Well, you know, I'm the natural-born executor." I said, "That's true, but Alvin wanted me to take care of you, and that's what I'm going to do, whether you like it or not." His notebooks finding them, discovering them, I remember during all of our contract talks, we'd have contract talks with the dancers. You know, what did you want to do next year? How much money could you make? How much money could you not make, et cetera. He always had these books where he was taking notes. And you're always wondering, what is he writing in those books? And is it about me? What is it? So when I found them, turning each page was really scary, because I never knew what was going to pop up about me, good, bad, or indifferent. And it's almost overwhelming now to think back on all of this. It's also invigorating and energizing and absolutely necessary. The more the world knows about Alvin Ailey, the man, the artist, the company founder, and groundbreaking visionary, the better we will all be able to receive his legacy that celebrates the human spirit with masterworks rooted in the generosity and beauty of his African American heritage. And that will make a critical difference to how we understand ourselves and one another today. I could not be more grateful to the Whitney Museum for organizing this exhibition, bringing Alvin Ailey and his achievement to the public as never before. Thank you.
Good morning. This is a different view from what I had earlier. I just thought we had a screen here. I didn't know everyone was here. But good morning. My name is Allan Gray, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here. And before I get into my remarks, I just want to, again, thank the Whitney Museum Board and Scott, and certainly Adrienne and CJ. If you're in the house, I want to thank you, who've made my journey with the Whitney just incredible and memorable. And Adrienne, I can't imagine anyone in the world that could galvanize Alvin's life the way that you have. And when I saw it Monday, I was overcome, because it represented everything that I'd always dreamed that we would do with the collection, and bringing all the moving parts together for such an extraordinary man who led such an exemplary, extraordinary life was, as we would say, a yeoman's task. So thank you so much from my heart and from our family. The Whitney's initiative has been consistent with everything, as I said, that we had envisioned. And I'd like to say that since Alvin passed, I was challenged with what to do with this collection. I remember when I got the call from Sylvia, and she said that, well, actually, I was told that I had the collection by a friend of mine, Horace Peterson, who was the founder of the Black Archives. And he called me up excited. He says, Allan. And I said, what? He says, you have, congratulations. I said, for what? And he says, you've just been named the recipient of Alvin's Archives. And I said, wow, I was stunned by it. But it was Horace Peterson who taught me the real value of what the archives were. And then I thought, what am I supposed to do now? I'm not an archivist. I was simply Alvin's friend. And but I waited and I waited and I waited for that magical moment to happen, where the heavens would open up, and I would suddenly be given guidance and direction on what to do with these archives. And that moment came in the form of an email about a year ago. And it was an email that, as I was in the middle of a lot of different things, and building a 75,000 square foot art center, putting together the largest public art project in the history of Kansas City at our new airport, but most importantly, venturing upon a new relationship with my life partner, Hilda. All right. And I ignored that first email. You remember? And then there was a second email, followed by a third email, followed by a call from Miss Waters, who I had to respond to. You know, I was compelled. I like that word. I was compelled to respond, which I did, and thus began our journey. And I would have to say a collaborative relationship, and yes, friendship, because you have been entrusted in Alvin's legacy and have done an incredible job. When you get upstairs and you get a chance to see what the Whitney and what Adrienne have put together, I am certain that you will be as moved as I was when I first saw it. So I've got about 45 minutes to talk here, so. But people often ask the question, why did Alvin, how did I meet Alvin? Why? And the first time I met Alvin actually was at the airport. I'd never met Alvin. I didn't know who Alvin was, frankly, but I was in charge of a weekend of performances for Alvin. And so he came down the causeway, and our eyes met. And he simply said, "You must be Allan." And the only thing I could think of saying was, "You must be Alvin." And that galvanized, created a connection of the heart, a connection of the spirit that lasted until he passed, and continues to guide me in the directions that I go artistically in terms of community. Alvin gave me so much in the short time that we knew each other. Alvin was. He was an extraordinary man, and this journey has been extraordinary. But he taught me about community, and he taught me to see the community, to see the world in a different way than I had perhaps seen before. And he could take me to these other worlds and places that he dwelt, that was his world. But he could also help me see the world through the eyes of a child. Like the time we were at the Kansas City's Starlight Theater, and we had the, I don't know, Sylvia, I think you weren't there, but Mary, you remember Mary Barnett? She was there, and so we had the company there for the first time for our first outreach, for our first 2 weeks in Kansas City, and someone had gotten a great idea. I don't know who that was. That it would be an extraordinary feat to have 5,000. Physically and mentally challenged individuals to come to this outdoor theater in the middle of September, October, for a performance, not knowing the contracts that were involved with that. And so we're there one morning, and the temperature is about 50 degrees, and Mary Barnett is going crazy, as were the dancers, you know, who had been my friends, but now I became my sworn enemy, and because I wanted them to do something that they had never done before. And so I'm standing there with Alvin and waiting for the sun to heat up the stage. And there was a young man, I remember, who was sitting next to us, to my left, and standing next to Alvin. And he had remained pretty much lifeless the entire time. I didn't know if he knew even that he was in an outdoor theater. But when the company came to the stage and when the music struck, he just lit up completely. There was movement that had not been there before. And he reached for Alvin's hand and held Alvin's hand through the entire performance. And I knew in that moment that there was something special that was taking place in Kansas City, that we had been given the opportunity to create what had not been created before. And this came out of conversations that Alvin and I had. We had what we'd call these dream sessions, Bennett. And we would sit, and Alvin would call me from any place in the world, usually at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And he would start by, "Allan, are you asleep?" And of course, I would say, "Yes." No, I wasn't asleep. I was awake, waiting for your call, Alvin. And thus would begin conversations. And we would talk about any manner of things, some personal, some having to do with the company, some having to do with things like Deep Purple, or was that the, but during those times, we started to talk about Kansas City and what we could create in Kansas City. And, loosely, it was about, I think the term then was outreach. It's art education now or something. But we spoke about what we could do in Kansas City and what he wanted to do in Kansas City. And that germinated for several months until I get a call, 3 o'clock in the morning. Allan, were you asleep? No. I think I'd like to do what we've been talking about in Kansas City. You think we can do it? Of course, my response was, yes, of course. Now, I was 28 years old, a 28-year-old black man that had never done an art project in his life, that did not have the relationships that I know now, Scott, that you have to do a project that's going to cost that much. I think our first budget was $325 million, not million, $325,000. It felt like $325 million. But we started there. And we pulled together a community of individuals that saw Alvin's vision, that were galvanized around his vision, and they started to see the possibilities in Kansas City. Alvin, I could say, in many ways, saved Kansas City. Kansas City, at that time, 1982, was a very racially divided community, a community that was segregated by culture, by social norms. The Friends of Alvin Ailey gave Kansas City an opportunity to come together around dance, to discover the power of dance and how dance could transform. And I like to use this word, it's from a movie, transfigurize the community. And so we came together, and we formed the Kansas City Friends of Alvin Ailey, and the Friends of Alvin Ailey exist to this day, some 40 years later. But I say that to say that what Alvin has done for me and done for countless people around the world, is to bring out the possibilities, to allow us to see in broader terms in ourselves, to see the connectivity and how we are connected as human beings. We're connected through this spiritual line that transcends race, it transcends social norms, and it allows us to do great things like the Whitney has done today, to bring the life of Alvin Ailey to in front of the curtain, to go beyond the proscenium into the hearts of people. And that is what this exhibition is truly about. It's about vision. It's about the power of dance to unite. It's about bringing people together. And I'm so happy that we've had that opportunity. I'm having this opportunity in my lifetime to experience this. And so there are a lot of moments that I could share if I had another 20 minutes, but I see that I don't. But I just want to end and say that I'm very pleased, very happy for our foundation, and my daughter Heather, she will be taking over the foundation. She just found out about this recently. So she's in a scare. But every now and then I can hear Alvin's voice, and as I scan across the communities and I look at opportunities to involve myself and involve other people, and I hear those words, Allan, are you awake?
Thank you to our guests, to Bennett, to Ms. Waters, Allan. You reminded us what an incredible responsibility we at the Whitney have these next few months, and even beyond the close of the show, to this legacy, this treasured legacy. And we're going to do our best every day to make sure that Alvin Ailey is recognized as the remarkable human being and creative genius that we all know him to be. I am really grateful that you shared your words. And if you want to come back to our next press preview, you're welcome. Whether it has anything to do with Alvin Ailey or not, you spoke so beautifully, I want to listen to you every time. Speaking of our next press preview, I am only going to dwell for literally 2 minutes on some of our upcoming shows, as long as we have you in our audience. We just want to share 4 or 5 exhibitions that are on the horizon over the next few months at the Whitney. The first of those, opening November 1st, will be a big reinstallation of works from our permanent collection, mostly from the 1960s to the present, called Shifting Landscapes, on the theme of landscape. It's going to include many recent acquisitions, never before seen at the museum. It's going to be a wonderful complement to the Ailey show, which will be on view concurrently. After that, we look forward to a couple of mid-career surveys, one by the artist Christine Sun Kim, who you may remember from a biennial a few years back. And actually, even before that, Christine is someone who has a long history with the Whitney, as she founded our Whitney Signs program, an ASL program, to bring deaf visitors into contact with our collection, our exhibitions, and we're just thrilled to have her incredible body of work coming to the Whitney in partnership with the Walker Art Center. Oops, I jumped one ahead. Someone's touching my slides. And then the last show I'll mention, opening in the spring, will be a survey show of Amy Sherald. We're really so thrilled about this show, and of course, Amy is most well known for having painted the official portrait of First Lady Michelle Obama, but there's a huge and incredible body of work there. So that painting is really just one of so many things that people will see that will be in the context of her entire career. This is a partnership with the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, where the show opens soon, comes to the Whitney, and then it will close in Washington, D.C. at the National Portrait Gallery, which of course is the permanent home of the painting you see on the left. And we just could not be more excited about the next 6 months of openings at the Whitney. Finally, I say it time and again, everyone's gonna be sick of me saying it. Starting this year, we launched 2 new free admissions programs, and they are really one of our proudest achievements. The Whitney is now free every Friday night from 5 to 10 p.m. It's a great date night, young people, DJs, that kind of thing. And we are free the second Sunday of every month, all day long. And during these hours, the Whitney is free for everyone, however old you are, wherever you live, whether that's in New York City or from very far away, and it is the entire museum. So everything on view, both our collection, our temporary exhibition galleries, and I am just really grateful to the people who made this possible, and to imagine the potential of these free hours meeting a show like Alvin Ailey, and the possibility that we have to share with so many more people and so many young people Ailey's legacy and work. So please come during these hours. They have incredible programs that are just so fun. I bring my son every of the free Sundays when we have the New York Public Library doing story time. We have art making. We will have the dance classes that will be doing in collaboration with the Ailey Company, and it's just a really lively time that you don't want to miss. So check out Whitney.org. I always say that, but this time you really have to check it out, because that schedule of dance performances that we mentioned, from Matthew Rushing's new premiere to so many other things to the Ailey Company, the tickets are available there. You'll see multiple performances every week. Every week a new thing is happening, as well as the public programs, as well as the classes. All of that information is there, and it's just truly a feast. So we hope to see you all at the Whitney again and again between now and February 9th, and I hope you'll please join me in congratulating Adrienne and everyone a part of this Ailey story. And I invite you to experience the show upstairs. Thank you.